I'm taking Pearland place.
So I hope this is okay with you, Mark, that we do record our programs and they are posted on our webpage for people who aren't able to attend virtually, in person virtually.
Wonderful. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Well,
Is someone taking Pearland's place?
yes, I
Okay,
am.
great.
Was that Marty?
Yes, but that's
Yeah.
great. I knew she was
Yes.
gone and I didn't know she'd made arrangements.
She
And
sure
I'm
did.
very glad she did.
So good evening and welcome everyone, both members and hopefully some people who are not necessarily members of League of Women Voters of Denver. I'm Susan Stark. I'm co-director. I'm Susan Stark. I'm pro-director of program. Do we have some? Is that
to mute? God damn it. So you might want to take your video off. Your internet's not working great.
take my video off?
Yeah, just
Okay.
hit
I
the
will do
button that
that.
says stop video, and then we'll hear your voice, but we won't see you, but it takes up a little less bandwidth. There we go.
Okay. Is this better?
Yep.
My pronouns are she, her. We're so pleased that you're able to attend this briefing. Briefing is leagueese for an informational meeting. For our guests, the League is a nonpartisan grassroots organization that has worked since the 1930s in Denver and 1920 nationally to improve our systems of government and impact public policies through voter education and advocacy. Our briefings throughout the League year, such as this one, serve to educate our members and voters and often lead to advocacy, as this one well could. We are recording, and I think all of you have received that information. Please use the chat for questions during the briefing. I think we will hold questions until after Mark and then Crystal speak, perhaps. Mark and Crystal, if you have things that you want to put up on the screen, you will have been made co-hosts so that you can do that. The chat also turns out to be a good place for sharing information with each other. And if people mention websites or links, the chat is a good place to put those. We have muted everyone so that we can all hear the speakers clearly. In terms of upcoming events, we do have our annual meeting on May 13th. It's our first in-person meeting for League since COVID. So we're excited to be able to see each other in person at Devonview Presbyterian Church. And our speaker for that annual meeting will be Britta Fisher. She's the new CEO of Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. I'd also like to remind you that there's a municipal runoff election, as if you need to be reminded. Probably all you have to do is go to your mailbox or your email on June 6th. And we, of course, always encourage voting. Our issue for tonight, the thing that we're going to discuss, is the Denver Basic Income Project. Direct cash assistance is a proven anti-poverty strategy. And we're innovating in several ways here in Denver and in Colorado. It's a means of giving cash directly to those who need it most and trusting these individuals to spend it as they choose to improve their lives. League of Women Voters nationally has positions that support our educating you and the public about basic income projects. In the social policy section of the League of Women Voters of the U.S. Impact on Issues, it is stated that secure equal rights and equal opportunity are important for all in the United States. We promote social and economic justice and the health and safety of all Americans. Since the late 1970s, the League has worked to combat poverty and end discrimination. This resulted in a 2-year study evaluating public and private responsibilities for providing food, shelter, and basic income level, which that study ended in 1988 and culminated in a position on meeting basic human needs. So that certainly falls, tonight's program falls within the sphere of that position. Our speaker tonight is Mark Donovan. Mark is a Denver-based entrepreneur and philanthropist. He received a BA in economics from Harvard and is a graduate of the National Outdoor Leadership School. In 2020, he founded the Denver Basic Income Project to advance the use of cash assistance to combat income inequality and injustice. He is committed to fighting all forms of injustice and protecting our planet for future generations. Also in our audience, an attendee is Crystal Ayala Goldstein. She's the programs manager of the Women's Foundation of Colorado's WINCOME program, which provides grantee partners, which are organizations that serve women, trans people, non-binary people, people who have a very difficult struggles finding secure places to live and safe places to be. The funds of this program are dedicated to providing what is called flexible cash assistance. So we'll begin with Mark. Please go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you everyone for welcoming me here today. It's great to be here. My name is Mark Donovan, and I'm a Denver-based entrepreneur. And as Susan read, I founded the Denver Basic Income Project in January of 2021. In 2020, when COVID was starting to take hold, and I saw the juxtaposition of two things happening. On one front, people were losing their sources of income, their stability, their housing. And then on the other side, I saw this incredible accumulation of wealth happening. Apple, for instance, grew by $1 trillion in market capitalization in that year, and Amazon by $800 billion. And so these disparities in wealth and opportunity were growing. And I decided that I wanted to try to take immediate action and do something to make a difference. And I was familiar with the direct cash space, and I just started to run an experiment on my own of giving out direct cash to individuals that had been impacted by COVID in June of 2020. And I started giving individual grants. And it was a really powerful experience. And I saw the immediate impact and realized that I started to do a deeper dive into the literature and to the research on this. And I saw that up in Vancouver, there was a program called the New Leaf Project that had done this with 50 people in their temporary shelters, and they had really powerful results. And Mayor Tubbs of Stockton had run a program and also had really great results. And the more I read, the more I saw that this is really something that seems to have a ton of potential, but we haven't really explored it very well yet. And so at the end of 2020, I started meeting with some of our local nonprofits like Mile High Ministry, Joshua Station, Colorado Village Collaborative, and started to float the idea of doing something at a larger scale. And we founded the project in January. I founded it with a seed grant, and we started meeting on a weekly basis to explore what it might look like to provide unconditional cash to our unhoused neighbors as a potential accelerated path to safety, stability, and opportunity. And so I'm going to tell you a bit about that journey that we've been on, how we got to where we are today. I don't want to do all the talking, so I would be happy if anybody has questions as we're going to unmute yourself and ask them as we go. If that's not the way you like to run these meetings, that's
Fine
fine too.
with me. If that's comfortable for you, that's fine
It's
with me.
very comfortable. Yeah, I would love, I'd like it to be as interactive as possible. And I do have some slides that I'll share, but I'm not huge on slides. I'm more on just talking through the story and understanding a little bit more about what your thoughts are on it and concerns and trying to explore it together. So I guess my first question is for this group is maybe with a show of hands, how many of you have heard of the Denver Basic Income Project? Okay, and if you're not on camera, yeah, if you put your hand up, I'll be able to see if you have or not. So it looks like maybe about half of you. Okay. So, I think we all agree that the situation with housing in Denver and across the country is just it's a national crisis. Housing is no longer affordable for more people than not, and it's resulting in more people living on the edge of homelessness. And there's a large percentage of Americans and Denverites who cannot afford even a $400 or $500 emergency, which happens. And so what happens is people fall into situations where they lose their housing and they are in very difficult situations. And so I'm going to see if I can share my screen now. And I'll walk through a few. Let's see. Here we go. All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to start off by just reading the mission statement of the Denver Basic Income Project, which is that the Denver Basic Income Project serves unhoused people by examining the impact of direct cash distributions in an effort to encourage a healthier society centered around human thriving. And let's see. Okay, sorry, I'm having some tech. There we go. Okay, vision statement. I'm going to read that as well. The Denver Basic Income Project recognizes and is opposed to the systemic barriers to rising out of poverty and supports providing cash assistance to those most impacted and in need. In eliminating financial barriers, we create a path to equity, social justice for the unhoused. Our organization is committed to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in all aspects of our organization and mission. So the premise, the kind of the big idea that we're exploring is what happens if you say to people, we trust you, we believe in you, and we are going to partner with you and provide some resources, provide an income floor that creates some stability for you, and see what happens when we do that. And we have partnered with DU's Center for Housing and Homelessness Research, and we are accompanying this program with a randomized controlled trial, which is the gold standard of research. And our program includes 805 participants. So it's a very significant, it's the largest in the country, it's the first in the country. So it has the potential to influence policy and the direction of interventions across the country. So it's an important program in that regard. And it's just also important in that it's providing this immediate support to people that are really most in need. So I want to talk a little bit about UBI, universal basic income, and guaranteed basic income, just to have make sure that the terms are clear. So when we talk about universal basic income, we're talking about a type of social welfare that provides every citizen with a set amount of money, regardless of their income level. So this is applying it to everybody across the board. Some of the pros of UBI is it reduces poverty, simplifies our social safety net, it encourages entrepreneurship, it provides a safety net for all citizens. Guaranteed basic income is a little bit different. Guaranteed basic income is more targeted, and that's what we're doing with the Denver Basic Income Project. We are serving the unhoused community specifically and exclusively with this program. And so the advantage of a targeted program is it takes less resources than trying to provide it to everybody. It also still reduces poverty when you're targeting those most in need. It also then creates more administrative costs and burdens in terms of having to target and administer the program in that way. So any questions about that so far, about the differences between the two and about what I've covered so far? Yes, Cindy.
How do you select the people that are on the program?
That's a great question. So with a randomized control trial, we do that with a random selection process. And so when we started to take applications in October of last year, the demand was overwhelming. In a short period of time, we had over 3,000 inquiries. We took 1,500 applications for 820 slots. And then we did, the university did a randomization process to put the people into 3 different cohorts, which I'll explain as I talk through how the program is structured. So in this case, it's a randomized selection process so that we can have a control group against which we can compare the results so that we can learn. A lot of this it's about first having impact on people that are in great need and providing opportunity and resources for them. But number 2, it's about learning. Where does it work? Where maybe doesn't it work? How can we do it better in the future? So having a really rigorously and well-run randomized controlled trial will allow us to have really robust learnings and to be able to, understand the kind of the causality that we're seeing. Thanks for that question. All right. And if I don't see hands, because my screen, okay, I think I should be fine. Again, just come right off mute if you want. So I want to talk about a little bit about what we're fighting for with guaranteed income. And it's this idea that we're going to try to plant seeds for economic opportunity for all Americans, that we can trust and respect the agency of people to decide how and on what terms to build their lives and provide for their families and contribute to society. Guaranteed income is essential for supporting work in all of its forms. And so we don't always value different types of work that are essential to our society. Volunteering, taking care of family members, giving back to our community, focusing on self-care, especially for people that are in this community of having experienced homelessness. The trauma of a day being unhoused and the stress can be quite significant, and the trauma that these individuals have experienced, the recovery time and that path varies greatly, and I think it's largely underestimated. And there's no shortage of resources, and actually we spend a lot of money already on a lot of different attempts to address these challenges and these inequities and this situation, also often without a sense of the situation getting better. I think most of us are feeling like things are getting worse. And so I think that's part of the reason why we have received a lot of support so far to do this work and try to show that an income floor can be a stabilizing force within our continuum of care. So the idea being that by providing this income floor and this stability, all of the other work that these great partners in our community are doing will be enhanced and will be accelerated. And so that's part of our theory of change. let's see. Okay, so what are we fighting against? Poverty is a failing of our systems, not our people. All too often, we are blaming the people, and this is an idea that we really need to shift. We have systemic racism and barriers to opportunity. The wealth gaps are enormous, and these things are built into our structures. And so the first step is to acknowledge that that we don't have a level playing field. And many of these inequalities are perpetuated by harmful narratives, and so about who's deserving. And so the way we're approaching this work is, again, starting from the place of we believe in you, we trust you, and I'm going to talk a little later about how that sets us up for conditions that are, we believe, more conducive to change and to the type of end result that I think everybody is in agreement that we want, which is, safe, stable places for everybody to live, and for opportunities for everybody within our community. So just so many people are living on the brink right now and being forced to make impossible choices that we don't believe we should be in that situation. Somebody shouldn't have to choose between paying a bill or putting food on the table. And again, we feel we have the resources to be able to provide a floor below which nobody will fall. Kind of the solution that we're proposing, which is this guaranteed income, creating this income floor, direct recurring unconditional cash payments. So in our case, with the Denver Basic Income Project, we are exploring 3 different type of payment options for our participants. We have one group of participants that will receive $6,500 up front, and then $500 a month for 12 months. Second group of people gets $1,000 a month for 12 months. And then the final group gets our control group, $50 a month for 12 months. And we provide everybody with a phone and a data plan for the year, and also with a rechargeable debit card if they're unbanked. So that's kind of the structure of how we're delivering cash. So with this work, we're hoping that we can show that it creates this accelerated path that we're talking about, and that ultimately can be built into our policy and to the way we address this at a systemic level. So I'm going to flash this. This is a lot on this. This is just and I can share this slide deck after, so for anybody that is interested. But we do have a theory of change that talks about the different challenges that this community is facing, and from high cost of housing, low wage work, predatory finance practices, physical health issues, mental health issues, substance use, interpersonal and systemic violence, racism, discrimination, stereotypes of homelessness, criminal records. These are all challenges to various degrees that different people within this community may face. And our mechanism for change is unrestricted cash and allowing people to make their own decisions. And our belief is that the outcomes and the ones that we're going to be measuring are that we'll have greater equity, we'll have increased housing stability, that employment will rise for this group, that there'll be greater financial health, physical health, mental health, substance use. And in the model program that we modeled after the New Leaf Project in Vancouver, they saw a 39% reduction in substance use in that study. Many studies show that it's not a significant change in that category. So that's one of the myths that often is raised. Food security, we expect greater safety. Possibly the most important of all of these is hope. Family dynamics, we'll be looking at public service utilization, time spent on activities. And so this is our theory of change. I'll pause for a second. Any questions up to this point?
I have one.
Yes,
How did
Susan.
you make the decision to work with people who are unhoused only, not the general population of people who are impoverished?
It's a great question. So when we started this work back in early 2021, we weren't sure exactly which community we were going to serve. But what became clear is first that the results we saw at New Leaf seemed really exciting, but it was a very small scale. And number two was nobody was really else was doing this with this segment of the of society. And it seemed really important. I mean, personally, as I thought, like, where do I want to spend my time serving and trying to make a difference? And I really thought, well, I want to try to work with people that are probably in the greatest need and are facing the biggest challenges. And so starting in January with the meetings with the nonprofit partners and with DBIP, we discussed all the different possibilities. Ultimately, we decided that's the path we wanted to go on. We thought we could make a difference in the community, and that we could also produce some really important data that would impact policy in a way that is super valuable, both locally, statewide, and at a national level.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
How does your program differ from the DIME program of the 1970s?
It's a great question. And so I wish Maria Sierra was here today. Was that Peg speaking? I couldn't.
That
I
was,
couldn't-
Yes.
that was, yes.
Oh, okay, thank you, Peg. So just as an interesting story, Maria Sierra, who is our community engagement manager, she worked previously for my Mile High Ministry, Joshua Station. Her mom was in that program. So Denver was one of a couple pilot projects in the 70s that explored the use of basic income. We differ in a few ways. I don't remember the exact amounts that they used or the duration. I mean, the biggest point is that we're specifically focused on the unhoused community, and what we're looking at is a much more broad set of factors where I think most of those programs at that time were kind of more focused on work and this idea that the goal was you had to get people back to work as the primary factor, and trying to explore, like, is this a disincentive to work? That's one of the other common myths that people think, that like if you give people this money, they're going to be less likely to achieve to be employed. But the Stockton program, the Stockton Economic Empowerment Demonstration that Mayor Tubbs ran, one of the first significant programs that got sort of the current momentum going, showed that the people receiving the money versus their control group were almost 50% more likely to achieve employment, full-time employment. So that kind of result is kind of is pretty normal in what we're seeing in programs. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're saying that it was more geared towards how income would affect employment. Is that correct?
That they were looking more at that, and you know, part of it is we did not give it, I think, also enough of a chance and enough time, and so there is also this this idea of a cliff effect that we are concerned about, and we'll watch with this, is like when you have a program like this and then it ends, what happens at the end of the program. And so, we believe that this income floor is a powerful stabilizing tool, and that like if we were to use it on an ongoing basis, that we would have lower costs overall and better benefits, better outcomes. So that's kind of part of our theory of change as well.
I think it
So
was CU that was doing the research on that. Is that correct?
that I'm not sure about. I need to circle back and do another deep dive. When I was initially doing research on this, I've read so many different things in the last 2 years now on it that I don't have all the details straight, but but it's really exciting to have some connections to that. And I talked to at least one person up in Boulder who was also a part of that program back in the 70s. So we kind of have a little bit of a legacy here in Denver. And so now to be doing another sort of groundbreaking piece of work in this space is exciting. And just because it didn't take hold then doesn't mean that it shouldn't have, or that it's not the right thing to do. And so we're hoping that the data that we produce will show that this is an important piece of a set of integrated interventions that are needed to fight homelessness and poverty and economic injustice and various forms of injustice.
And I think I know there was one project, and I'm not sure it was the name of it, but the research was actually done by the Rand Corporation, and the focus was more on women who were on, in quotes, welfare. And so it was more focused on women and children in the AFDC program, or who were no longer in the AFDC program, because I'm not sure the timing. And I always recall one finding from the Rand Corporation, which is that the women who were unable to successfully find work were generally experiencing, or in other words, were on welfare for longer, were experiencing mental illness.
There's certainly a lot of that. And who was just speaking? I'm not seeing that.
That was Barbara Allen Ford.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Yeah, and so again, the idea is not that direct cash is the answer to all of our problems. We have so many people that are suffering from substance issues, from mental health issues. We have amazing organizations throughout our continuum of care that are working on all of these things. Our idea is that when you have this income floor, it creates stability, and it creates greater opportunity for those organizations to do their work faster and in a more impactful way. And so together, we think we're better than apart. And so trying to bring our communities and our partners, our service providers, all organizations, everybody in the community together to do everything that we can until we actually move the needle on poverty and reduce homelessness drastically and make it something that's just short-lived and have safe pathways in abundance. That's what we're hoping that we can do. And so with this work, you can see some of the things at the conclusion of the project that we hope that we'll understand better. And we're going to be contributing to the knowledge for people that are experiencing homelessness in terms of how this intervention can work. We're going to have some information about how a lump sum payment up front versus a steady monthly payment might work. And again, we have such a large sample group that we're going to have really, really robust data, which is important.
When is this program supposed to conclude?
So it's the first phase, which we're in right now, is a 12-month window that started we started rolling enrollments in November through February. And so we took our last enrollment in February of this year. So the last payments will go out on in February of 2023. Our first report will come out in October, and final report in the summer of 2024. Yes, Cindy.
Oh,
In a climate of very expensive housing in the Denver area, and I would say a challenge to find housing, how do you maneuver that? Do you have ready places that people can go into?
It's a great question. And so I guess the first thing I'll say is we are not doing enough on affordable housing, and this does not solve the affordable housing problem. And as you watched from this crazy mayoral race, we've just gone through the first phase of it's at the top of the agenda. Everybody's thinking about it. There's a lot of money coming through to try to address it. I don't think we found really good solutions yet, or where we have good solutions, we're not deploying them at the scale that's necessary. But what we've learned so far, and what our friends out in San Francisco at Miracle Money and others are learning, is that people that are experiencing homelessness and that are used to surviving on so little are really super resourceful. And we've been amazed at the number of people that are able to take this money in Denver and secure safe, stable housing. And so at this stage, we don't have solid research numbers to report, but we have anecdotal evidence, and we're hearing stories that are really encouraging and making us believe that, that people can stretch these dollars further than maybe we thought was possible. But until we actually seriously address affordable housing and create a housing abundance, that's going to be an ongoing problem. And so we as a community have to address that. And this is sort of a safeguard in this moment of really lacking in what we need. And it's going to take time to build that out. Susan?
Yes. So do you have any other interventions or variables, since it's research, such as case management, to help people if they say specifically, I want to try to find housing? Do you refer them to any other organizations? Do you have any help in-house for people who are looking for very specific things that they need, or something for their children, for some educational opportunity, whatever?
So Susan, I think you must have maybe you got a sneak preview of the slide deck, because you just set me up for the next slide.
Oh, good. Oh, there it is.
So one of the elements of the program, there's 4 criteria to participate in the program. One is that you're 18 or over. The second is that you are unhoused, as defined. There are a number of different definitions for it. The HUD definition is a little more restrictive than what we wanted to use. The McKinney-Vento definition that's often associated with schools is more broad, and we kind of leaned in that direction. So somebody that was couch surfing, unstably housed, would be eligible to enter the program. So that's the second criteria. Third criteria was that you're not presenting with severe and specifically untreated mental health or substance needs. And finally, the fourth criteria is that you're connected with one of our partner organizations. We partnered with 19 active partners in this program who are listed here to run our application process, the recruiting, applications, and enrollment, and be the point of contact through the program. We felt that relationship was really important to this work, and establishing trust with the community. And one of the other goals of our design was to look through an equity lens, and specifically a racial equity lens. So for instance, if the Black and brown members of our community represent less than 10% of the population in Denver, but they represent over 25% of the unhoused community. So, and with our Native community, the overrepresentation is even greater. And so one of our goals was to make sure that we worked with a set of partners that was able to reach the community in a way that we could represent with our participants the demographics of homelessness, not of population. And if we didn't do that organically, we were going to do that when we randomized the data by stratifying the data. We didn't have to do that. We were able to do that organically, which we were very pleased with. And so, you know, we see this as a tool for racial justice, for health equity, for economic justice. And we have amazing partners that range from very large partners like the Colorado Coalition to smaller partners that are better suited to reaching more vulnerable or difficult to reach individuals. And one of our goals also was the hope that we would connect people to services that were not connected previously. And that has been the case. And there was actually a story that came up last week of one of our participants, a woman who was fleeing domestic violence and was on the street and in a very bad place, and came into one of our partners, applied, was accepted, was initially disappointed because she was in the control group, was only going to get $50 a month. But then because she was there and she had not been connected at all previously, because she was there, she started engaging in services. She listened to what they had to offer. She engaged in various services, and she ultimately quickly was able to get stable and got a job and is housed. And this was somebody who was just in the control group. And so that was really, stories like that are emerging are really give us hope. Cindy.
I'm sorry, I forgot to put my hand down.
Oh, no worries. Okay. And Susan, did you? Okay. Any other questions before I move on? Those are great questions. Thank you. Keep them coming. I'd rather.
I guess I do have one more.
Great.
This is Peg. How does these payments, maybe you said this before and I missed it. How do these payments affect people's eligibility for other programs such as Medicaid?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in the initial outreach and the application process, we spent time with each individual talking to them about the fact that it could have an impact on their benefits. We had have an exemption for TANF, but we don't for SNAP, and SSI, for instance, is a significant benefit that could be significantly impacted. You could lose that. And so the recommendation was you need to speak with your benefits provider and with your case manager if you have one, and really be clear if this could impact those things, and make an informed decision before you give consent and join this program. So that's going to be one of the things we're looking at as well, is to see what kind of impact it has on people's benefits.
Again, in that same vein, what about the American Relief Package? Were there people that were on that were coming off of that they knew they wouldn't be getting that assistance?
Yes, I mean, for sure, there are people in our program that are going to be, as benefits are withdrawn at this stage, that are going to just be impacted by that. So that'll be one of the factors that's impacting results in this window. So, you know, that's something we're going to be looking at and trying to learn from as well. Jeanette.
What size of the people with disabilities are part of this group that you've taken on?
Oh, that's a good question. I should know that number off the top of my head. It's a pretty significant number. I'm thinking, so don't hold me to this, but I think it's over 40%. and we are working with Atlantis community and others. And beyond our immediate partners, the 19 that you see here, we also have a group called the Alliance Thought Partners that is got over 100 members now. And on the first Friday of each month, we hold an hour-long meeting where we provide updates on the status of the program. And then we'll dive into one particular topic and get feedback. And so we're trying to have as much input as we can to inform the direction that we go with this program. And we've had a lot of support and input from people that are working in that space, and I've tried to integrate that into the work we're doing.
That's called the Alliance Thought Program Partners.
Alliance Thought Partners, yes. So again, the final design is what we call a mixed method randomized controlled trial. Mixed method meaning that we have a number of different ways that we'll be connecting with people. We have a long form enrollment survey. We do bi-weekly phone surveys. The phones have turned out to be a really important tool. One of the things that we found really interesting, the early learnings that we've had, is we intentionally decoupled the research from the program. So once you're accepted into the program, you really don't have any obligation to do anything. It's unconditional cash, and you did not even have to participate in the research. And a number of people up front said to us, like, that's not a good idea. You need to but there's something fundamental about this approach that says, no, it's not going to be conditional. We are expressing our trust in you first. And amazingly, over 92% of our participants voluntarily opted in to participate in our research, because we explained to them that if we work together on this and we can show that it works, then we have a chance of sustaining it and expanding it and providing it to others. And so that approach of really not talking it, but actually doing it, like really extending trust to the community, we think then establishes reciprocal trust. And that's when I say, like, the hope and the trust may be more important than the cash. It may well be, because once somebody believes that a better future is possible, then maybe they will engage in the work that's needed to overcome trauma, or to overcome a substance addiction, or some type of mental health challenge that requires support. And so by creating trust, I think we create opportunities that don't exist otherwise. And so it's really important. Jeanette, did you have another question? You're on mute still. There you go. Oh, you're still on mute. Oh, no, okay, your hand's down. Okay. So again, we're randomized, mixed method randomized control trial. We provide a rechargeable debit card. About 70% of our participants are unbanked or chose not to receive their funds by an ACH transfer. About 30% are receiving transfers that way. We provided everybody with a cell phone and a year's worth of service. T-Mobile and Premier Wireless were our partners on that. We're super grateful for them working with us on this program. And then we have a CBO, a community-based organization that's the point of contact, so that we have, we trained over 150 screeners and points of contact for this work. And I'm going to back up real quick. I skipped over this, but the timeline, so you can see it, is, June, I told you I started doing those initial grants and just exploring this personally. Started organizing as a group in 2021. I'm an entrepreneur. Before I got into this work, I've been had my own business for almost 30 years. And, I believe in like accelerating, removing waste and doing things as in sort of shorter timelines. I think there's a lot of waste built into a lot of things we build. And so when I showed up, I was encouraged everybody, listen, I said, we can launch this thing in the fall of 2021. And of course, community pushed back and said, no, we can't, that's too fast. And I said, let's try. And so we started working toward that goal. And we decided we would do an initial soft launch, an initial trial. And so in August of 2021, we did an initial trial of a full 12-month program with 11 participants and 2 partner organizations. And it turned out they were right. We were not ready and we needed to take more time. And so we did. We slowed down, we kept meeting, we brought in some consultants, we brought in more partners to continue to build and solve problems that we saw occur, or challenges or need for additional capacity that emerged from soft launch 1.0. Then we launched the second soft launch in June of 2022, this time with 28 individuals and 8 partner organizations, and it went much more smoothly. And we felt confident that we were ready to move to a larger full launch. That program, final payments will be going out next month, and we'll get to run through the end of the program process and procedures and steps to learn from that as we prepare for what happens with the hard launch. And then, as I said, in October, we started taking applications, and we did a rolling enrollment from November to February. And we ultimately enrolled 805 participants who are in the program as it exists today.
So I saw a comment, and several of us among the people attending today are people who have previously been in mental health professions. If someone manifests the need for mental health services or substance abuse services after they're admitted to the program, is there access for them to get that support?
Yes. And so first, we have each person in the program has a point of contact, and they're connected with one of our partner organizations. Now, as you saw from that list, it's a wide range of different service providers. And one of the things we're looking at with our study is how do each of these different service approaches impact the results that we have across the full program community. But our partners will make referrals as part of what they do if somebody shows a need for something that they do not offer. And if we see somebody that is in need of something, we will also make referrals. And so we're trying to use our website as best we can, and we're going to work on improving that to make it as useful as possible to provide as much useful information as we can to this community, especially that we have established a trust-based relationship. We think that there is a great opportunity there to try to put opportunities and resources in front of people that maybe they didn't have access to before or didn't even know about. But the answer is yes. Like, we're going to do everything we can to provide access to whatever any individual in the program needs or is looking for.
There is a question in chat about what's the breakdown by gender?
It is, I think it's about, so most of our numbers track the demographics of the unhoused community pretty closely. For women, there are a little more, I think we were a little over on for women. I think it's in the 47% range. Again, I should have my numbers memorized, and I apologize. We'll be posting those at some point. Sorry, I'm not 100% certain on that number.
Okay. There was, Barbara, did you have one other question?
I just
Thanks for-
think one of them now.
Thanks for reading the questions from the chat. I appreciate that. So keep throwing those in.
One of the other questions is, what is the percent of families that are enrolled, or family groups or couples or partners versus individuals? Do you know that?
Yeah, it's around 21%.
21% are some sort of family group, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Well, and of the 805 participants, is it essentially 1/3 who are receiving the $50 a month in the control group?
It's, we weighted a little bit more heavily to the control group because we knew there would be more attrition there since it's a lower amount of money. So the original targeting was 260 for groups A and B for the two cash groups. And then for the control group that was going to be 300 people. And since we ultimately only were able to enroll 805 people, the numbers are a little bit less than that, but that gives you kind of the rough weighting of it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
I
you.
have a couple questions.
Please
Marty.
go ahead.
First, rather than try to do the math, I would be interested in the total amount of money we're talking about here. And then I know you talked about random selection and yet you interviewed people. I don't see it, not that I'm familiar with all these groups, but I don't see a lot of substance abuse groups in there, and although probably many of them touch on that. So that was not an issue at all in terms of the people that applied or were selected to be in this program. Is that correct?
So we use a screening tool called the Basis 24. That's a validated tool for making this assessment, and we set that anybody that's at the kind of the extreme of that measurement would be excluded from the program,
Okay.
but anybody else would be included. So, you know, this is one of the, you know, challenging pieces of this too. And again, we're going to learn as we work through this, how, you know, if that is the best way to approach this, or if we need to make adjustments as we learn. So, you know, there's a lot that we need to learn as we do this work, and that's part of the way we're approaching it, is to really go in with the idea that we don't really know all the answers, but we are going to try working together with this community and with all these partners to try to find better pathways.
Wouldn't you worry that people with substance abuse obviously would probably just buy drugs with the money?
That is a common perception, and like we pointed out with like the New Leaf Project, the reality is that for most people that is not the case. That doesn't mean that there won't be people that will choose that pathway, but the majority of people in most of these programs that we've seen in other places have spent their funds on things just like you would expect they would. They would spend it on housing, on paying down debt, on trying to maybe fix a car so they have transportation to get to a job. So many different things that are that come through. And so in our study, that's not the main focus of this, but for people that do choose to use their debit card, the 30% that receive cash on the debit card, if they actually do purchasing with that card, there will be some purchase data that will be available to study in an anonymous way. But pretty consistently, the results seem to come out of other programs that most people spend the money on exactly what you and I probably would.
Two questions in chat that relate to funding.
Hmm.
What are the funding sources now? Entirely philanthropic, or do you have some government funding? And secondly, what is the estimated total cost of the program?
Yeah, great questions. We started privately funded, so I put the initial seed grant in, and we run initially a small program. We thought maybe we served 35, 50 people with DU. We started organizing, and then some of our foundations, like the Colorado Trust, stepped up almost immediately in February and said that they were going to give us $500,000 to $1 million, and other community foundations stepped in, and we quickly got up to almost $4 to $5 million. We then, at the end of 2021, with our first soft launch underway, started discussing you getting some ARPA funds from the city. And we ultimately got a $2 million grant from the city and we're working with Host as one of our partners. And we also had a community service block grant from the state. We have some initial public funding as well. And ultimately the path to doing this at scale is public funding, but the way to pilot it and explore it first at this stage is either private funding or private public funding. And so the amount of cash that will ultimately be deployed is a little bit over $7 million, and the cost to run the program is over $9 million. And so initially, when we started to do this, the hope was that we could keep overhead to 10–15%. It's going to be higher than that, but the other reality of this is this is a really kind of complex program with lots of different moving parts and elements, and to get it right did require a lot of organizing and professional development and work and some investments. So while the costs are higher than I would personally like to see them, the investment that we've made in building a model that can be shared with others, could be amortized, and that's part of what we hope will happen, is that we have created a programmatic model that can guide others to do this more quickly and more effectively. As we lay out, these are the steps that we went through over 2 years to get to where we are. If you do it in your own way and build your own community coalition, you may not end up at the exact same place, but you can benefit from our learning. As I said, when we started back in 2021, there were only a few people working in this space. Now we're part of a national coalition called the Guaranteed Income Community of Practice that has over 400 members. It convene monthly, talking about sharing best practices and talking about how to bring this to policy. We're part of the Colorado Direct Cash Community of Practice, which is also a group of organizations that are committed to exploring the impact that direct cash can have. This is a intervention that is no longer on the fringe. Give Directly, an international organization, has raised over $1 billion. The child tax care credit, in one fell swoop, reduced child poverty by 50%. It works. That we didn't renew it was tragic and harmful, but it's back in discussion. Where direct cash is used, it creates accelerated paths to better conditions. It's health equity, it's economic justice, it's racial justice, it's social justice, it's investment in local communities. When we give large tax credits, those do not largely end up in local communities. But when you give this community a member of this community $1,000, it's going to end up in the local community. And so there's a multiplier effect that happens. And so there are economic arguments, there's moral and social arguments for this that I believe are all really, really powerful. But there is a large number of pilots happening now, I think across the country, over 100, last I heard. But Denver is really unique, and we're proud to be that we're, again, the first and the largest to do this in this particular space. And there's a lot of responsibility that we have, and we know that we have to invest time and energy to talk with the community, get feedback, and work together on it. And if we do that well, and we actually are successful, the impact could really spread quickly. And so this is where I'll turn to all of you for help and ask you to work with us on debunking myths that people may have, and to talk through the issues that you may still have and questions you have, so we can work together to serve everybody in our community and have safe spaces for them and opportunities that we can all live really well together here in this wonderful city.
You give me a segue to turn to Crystal to have her talk about her program. And it's one of the other programs that is using a similar model, not exactly like yours, but is it okay if I jump to Crystal?
Yes, perfect. Yes.
Awesome. This is such an exhilarating conversation. I love listening and all the great questions. And Mark, thank you so much for sharing all of this deep, detailed information. And I'm happy to share kind of an overview of where the Women Foundation's, the Women Foundation in Colorado's work is in this guaranteed income and basic cash assistance space. So as Susan shared in the beginning, we are operating a grant making program called WINCOME. It stands for Woman Plus Income Equals Woman Thriving. And really the premise is that women, when they are trusted to make their own decisions with money, are able to excel economically and just prosper in whatever that means to them. And so that's really the basic premise of WINCOME. We partner with 19 grantee partners across the state of Colorado, 13 of which are direct service organizations. So they are providing some sort of holistic programming. I'll actually put in our website in the chat here, so you can kind of take a look at our grantee partners and a little bit more information and context. But 13 are offering that direct service paired with some sort of flexible cash assistance. And so where the Women's Foundation of Colorado differs in this conversation is flexible cash assistance can include direct cash assistance. So those direct payments made in cash or check to a program participant. But they can also include in our work third-party payments, so payments to third-party vendors. So if a program participant needs support with rent or needs to buy a new water heater, those are all payments that could be made to, for example, Home Depot or their landlord. And that's in our program, that's viewed as flexible cash assistance, and it could be direct cash assistance. So with that, we also partner with 6 public policy organizations. So another emphasis of WINCOME is how do we support systems change so that more women and more families in Colorado have more of what they need. More cash in their pockets, essentially. So as Mark shared, that extended earned income tax credit and the child tax credit legislation that's happening this session is something that we support as a foundation, and working with our grantee partners. It's something that we've seen that is very beneficial. And I guess I could also kind of wrap up this time because I don't have a formal presentation for everyone, but also happy to answer any questions. This WINCOME grant making approach is also about flexibility, not only for community members and women in our state, but also about the relationships that we build with these wonderful organizations that are providing these services and providing and distributing then this flexible cash assistance. So I was thinking to myself how I would answer some of these demographic questions that came up for the Denver Basic Income Project, and they're all so wonderful. And I'm just like, oh, do I know these numbers? And part of it is we are trying to be more flexible in even the way our grantee partners report back to us how the funding has been utilized. And so we have some general great data that we can share, but for example, the direct split between genders is something that we don't have a set percentage for. Overwhelmingly, as you can imagine, the program participants do identify as women, but in terms of like that split, we don't have that direct percentage because that's not something we ask our grantee partners. We actually ask them to provide us the demographic information that they wish. So, you know, I think with the Women's Foundation is a little bit, well, it's different, of course, because we're trying to create more equity in our grant making practices as a whole. And then, of course, explore this direct cash and guaranteed income space in Colorado and how that could look like within our specific Colorado landscape. You know, and I'll kind of wrap up with sharing a little bit about the community of practice in Colorado that Mark also shared about. You know, that's something that the Women's Foundation is really interested in, and really we want to dive into what we're finding, what we're seeing in these pilots in Colorado and these direct cash demonstrations in Colorado, to hopefully inform then policy that we can implement, whether that's at the state level or in a county, you know, level. And so WINCOM is very much in a learning, we're learning a lot through WINCOM. It's a 3-year commitment. So we started in 2021. The 3 years will end in 2024. And we're, you know, learning from our grantee partners how to best utilize the cash. What are their program participants utilizing the cash for? What are they hearing? What are they seeing? What are the needs? And so I'll wrap up now, but I hope that folks can visit the website, learn more, and I'm also happy to answer any questions. I'll put in my email in the chat as well if folks want to follow up directly. Also, if folks have questions about the community of practice here in Colorado, I'm happy to answer those. The Women's Foundation is a co-convener of that group. So thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you,
And
Krista. I see Cindy has her hand up.
I do. I don't know whether this would be a side kind of research, but you said the women offer whatever they want to put into the research model, divulge of themselves. Have you seen, as women gain more control over their lives, that their health also gets better and better? Is there any research that way?
Yeah, so I'll clarify a little bit. The grantee partner organizations themselves choose the demographic information, for example, that they share with us. So some of those questions are open-ended, and then the grantee partners, so you know, the EDs, the grant managers, whoever our contact is, will then share the information that is most pertinent to them. As far as the actual program participants, we do have, last year we created a menu of questions with an evaluation partner that the grantee partners could choose from, any questions that they wanted to then ask the grantee partners, or excuse me, the program participants. So some of those questions were, you know, what did you spend the cash on? Do you feel like this cash supports your economic security or resiliency? Questions like that. And some of our partners were able to then ask the questions from that menu, and then we received some data, and we'll have an evaluation report that will be shared publicly in May, so actually in just a few weeks. So I hope folks will be on our website to check that out. But in terms of the health outcomes, we haven't seen that in our WINCOM research. I do know from just seeing research about direct cash assistance and other demonstrations across the country. I'm thinking of Magnolia Mothers Trust, that is a direct cash demonstration that's actually, I think, the longest running. There are some positive benefits to having direct cash income and then better health outcomes as well. And I'll put in the Magnolia Mothers Trust website also in the chat. But yeah, to go back to your question, for WINCOM specifically, we haven't seen that yet. We just haven't asked that question yet, but that's a really great question.
Thank you, Crystal. Mark, do you have any closing words that you might want to add? We didn't get through all your slides. Is there,
Oh,
is
that's
there something you want to?
That's okay. I pulled this one up toward the end, and I'm going to show my email in case anybody wants to get in touch to follow up at all. But these are kind of a couple of the just main points that, that I think are really important to think about: poverty reduction, increased economic activity, improved health outcomes. There's a 20-year gap between the life expectancy of somebody that's chronically unhoused and us, and that's unconscionable, and that doesn't have to be. And so providing a pathway to safe, stable housing will absolutely, poverty is one of the greatest social determinants of health. So
Yes.
health equity is a huge part of this. Enhanced social protection, empowerment. So we see lots of great benefits. We're excited to see the actual data come through, and let me see. Oh, I'm not in my presentation mode. Sorry. Okay. So and then to sum it up very simply, we think it's about trust, hope, community, and opportunity. That's my email, mark@denverbasicincomeproject.org. And I have a kind of a set of links that is a lot, but if you want to go deeper, there's a lot of information out here. I wish I had access to this when we started organizing back at the beginning of 2021, because this would have been very helpful. But there's toolkits, there's blogs, there's institutes that are writing on this. There's a lot of activity in this space. There's some at the bottom, the other reports, you can see what Crystal was mentioning. Crystal, thank you for being an active organizing member, leader of the Colorado Direct Cash community. It's an amazing group that's working together as we need to take on these big challenges. We can't do it alone, but Magnolia Mothers Trust is listed in there. So I'm just grateful to have been here with all of you, and happy to answer any more questions you have, or if you're all ready to head home for dinner or to whatever your evening brings, I'm happy
Does
to.
anybody
back
have
to you
a
as well.
question that if you don't get it answered tonight, you're just not going to sleep well? I don't think so.
Or thoughts on this.
Or
and just
thoughts,
kind of
comments.
reflections on
Some
what
of
you
the
think.
comments are, thank you so much for this presentation, and thank you for the work that you're doing and for initiating this project and attaching it to a research piece so that there is learning that comes out of it. That's something that we absolutely support in League. We do long-term studies and in-depth studies before we take positions on issues in our communities and in our country. So thank you very, very much. This has been very informative. I think you have also dispelled some myths and helped us understand. I think sometimes when people talk about giving cash to somebody, they get concerned. And you have, I think, helped us understand those basic issues of trust and hope and empowerment as being crucial pieces of how we really can help people to move from instability, certainly in housing in their lives, toward stable housing and healthier lifestyles that enhance their well-being. Thank you. Thanks to everybody. Renee, you have your hand up, or are you just clapping? She's doing the clapping hands. Thank you again. We sure appreciate it. This has been very interesting. Good night.
It's been great to be here with you. Reach out at any time, and thanks for organizing and creating community here. That's what is the only thing that's going to get us through this. So I'm grateful for that.
Thank you. Take care. Good night, everyone.
Night, everybody.